What's good, everybody? I'm Brandon, and thanks for joining me for a review of Capcom's latest hit video game, Monster Hunter Wilds. Wilds is a sixth entry in the mainline Monster Hunter series and a follow-up to 2018's Monster Hunter World. Considering that World has sold about 25 million copies as of this time last year, and Wilds is soaring past 8 million copies in a matter of days, the game is well past being a niche Japanese RPG and is more of a full-blown cultural phenomenon at this point. Personally, never really been my thing. My first encounter with Monster Hunter was back on the PSP with Monster Hunter Freedom, which I was way too young to fully understand how to play at the time, so I mostly just remember being bummed out that I spent the little money that I had gotten for the year on video games on something that I didn't really like. Considering the PSP hasn't been relevant for over 20 years now, and I'm a sucker for Japanese role-playing games and third-person action games, I figured it was time to give this oddball dinosaur extinction simulator another go. The bottom line is that I liked Monster Hunter Wilds, but I don't think I'm ready to love Monster Hunter Wilds. For the uninitiated, the Monster Hunter series has always been about killing monsters to get materials to fight bigger and far more dangerous monsters. The series has always been focused at having online multiplayer at its core, and definitely was one of the first console games out there to kind of pioneer the MMO light. While the game started much more simple, only allowing the player to join the server and do some quests with their friends over the web, it's grown into a full-blown Destiny-like, complete with microtransactions, expansions, and content updates. As far as my playthrough goes though, I'm mostly stuck to mainbaining the story quests. I've also barely touched any of the endgame content. I definitely think I've gotten a decent idea of what I'd be in for if I played this game more regularly, aside from like min-maxing my character for ultimate monster destruction. I'll say that there's a lot to love about Monster Hunter Wilds. For the most part, it's a very high quality feeling video game. Not only does each monster have its own quirks, attack animations, spawn locations, and materials to gather, there is a huge variety of monsters to fight too. It's not like you're just stuck fighting dragons or dinosaurs the whole time. You fight everything from flowery arachnids to farting orangutans and even a self-immolating volcano octopus. Even the dragons aren't regular dragons, they usually have a feature or two that sets them apart from the smogs of the world. Whether that be shooting lightning or melting from one dragon into another dragon in the middle of a fight, there's truly a monster for everybody here. The whole monster obsession in this game actually reminds me a lot of kind of the horror or kaiju fans' obsession with monsters. I can only imagine that this subculture had some sort of inspiration for this game, considering it's all about fighting aggressive monsters, but I digress. Now, while you can get away with just trudging through the main story, you will inevitably have to go grind out some materials for that set of armor or that weapon that you've been window shopping, giving you tons of cool looking weapons and armor to craft, play dress up in, and customize to whatever build you're going for. Considering there are 14 different types of weapons in this game, all with their own special attack animations and features, there's frankly enough content here to keep you busy for a long time, whether you're a filthy casual or going for any sort of completion status. It is undoubtedly a cool experience to go into strange spider dens and frozen caverns with your friends, to bash raptor skulls in so you can roast their flesh for an attack bonus, and grind their bones into a sword for that cat that heals you sometimes. I dress my cat up as a little octopus with a brain for a head, which is kinda cool. Not all is well on the Wilds front though. The game launched in a somewhat messy state, and I'd argue that it doesn't exactly run all that great on my PS5. In fact, my biggest gripe about playing through this game on my PS5 Pro was that it just was super ugly sometimes. Almost as if the textures like weren't loading in properly and were stuck in some sort of low LOD state. It sucked. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand that I'll be getting less than stellar graphical quality playing on their performance mode, and I generally find those modes worth it, considering you get a locked 60 FPS, but damn, I just kind of expected more out of the RE engine here, considering it's kind of proven itself to be a graphical powerhouse in the past. The high resolution mode does seem to remedy most of the immediate ugliness that you see emanating from this game, but it still doesn't seem to quite have that same refined design and feel that other popular Japanese role-playing games like Elden Ring do. And that's of course at the expense of playing an action game at 30 FPS. I'm definitely not like a frames or graphics snob by any means, but I did kind of expect a little bit more out of Capcom in this area, considering they've been kind of on a comeback recently. Honestly, it's nothing so bad that would ever stop you from playing the game, and it most likely will be remedied remedied through updates in the future. Something you can't necessarily fix through updates though is design choices, and I'd love to see Capcom take a fine-tooth comb through the next entry by kind of overhauling the open world and changing some of the more dated gameplay mechanics or even patchwork ones from older entries. You can definitely tell that the Monster Hunter team seems like they don't have a ton of experience designing open worlds, because I'm not even sure you'd call this an open world. It's more a series of tunnels that lead to small open zones and interconnected walkways that lead you to other parts of the world. To be fair, this is kind of the first time in the series that they've gone for this style of map design, and while there are some very neat sights to see, it ultimately feels less like a wide open world to explore and more a series of Disneyland-esque backdrops and hallways leading you to your next encounter. This problem is both exasperated and streamlined by the Sacred you ride throughout the game. For all intents and purposes, it's a chocobo from Final Fantasy. I made mine yellow. Anyway, the game by default sets the Sacred to auto mode, which will just kind of beeline it towards your next quest when you have it set in your journal, basically Ubering you to your next location while you either admire the sights or get prepped for the battle you're on your way to. This is great for accessibility and bad for fun, more or less throwing all the enjoyment of exploration and discovery out the window. You could argue that that type of gameplay isn't exactly core to Monster Hunter, but it makes that handcrafted open world feel more like a train station. Making the open world one of the big new selling points for this Monster Hunter game seems a bit weird to me, considering it feels a little half-baked, until you realize that they've been making players load into zones and walk to their destinations in every game prior to this. Kinda coming full circle on the streamlining of that process through the open world design, which works fine for the type of game that this is, but isn't exactly what I look for in games of a similar vein. There's no doubt this game is expensive though. Check out this sweet real-time mocap studio. Unfortunately, they used a lot of that money to mocap cutscenes and record lines for one of the driest and most by-the-book narratives I've heard this year. Incredibly hard to get through these cutscenes without skipping them. They attempt to add a plot about this kid who lost his dad that ends up unraveling into a bigger story about why the monsters were getting aggressive and attacking people in the first place. Nothing really new or of interest to see here outside of some cute characters and moments throughout your romp through the story. Now, I'm sure that you have at least heard of this in passing, considering it's one of the most memorable moments in the main story quest, but the RE Engine food technology is off the chain. Cheese Naan and Surf and Turf have never looked this good in a video game before. A hearty salute going out to the men and women out there on the front lines using cutting-edge technology to render digital fondue. All these issues I've been bringing up though ultimately fell to the back burner as I went out on my next hunt instead of worrying about the half-loaded textures. I eventually settled into my insect glaive and was far more concerned about knocking out a run against this or that monster to get a piece of armor I needed to finish a set I was crafting than worrying about passing by another location I had already been to on my rideshare chocobo. Turns out the part of the game they did put all their time into is the hunting monsters part, and it feels incredibly good to do. Mastering my insect glaive and using it is straight up power fantasy at its finest. In Monster Hunter Wilds, they also added a wound system. As you hit a monster over and over again, red marks appear. Keep hitting these red marks and those wounds will burst, causing big damage and dropping extra crafting materials. Just a little touch that adds a bit of complexity and kind of keeps you on your toes to get the most out of every encounter. The combat and character customization is by far and wide the reason that people show up to these games. And once I realized that, I was like, okay, cool, I get why we're here now, and most of those other issues sort of melted into the background. Monster Hunter Wilds is far more concerned about hooking the player into logging on every day and finishing their dailies than it is about crafting a compelling narrative, and I'm fine with that. Sure, it felt like a slog here and there, and I didn't always have the motivation to get back in there, but I do respect that it is some people's thing. I've played my fair share of massively multiplayer games like WoW and Destiny, and I've historically had fun with these types of experiences in the past. But outside of combat, it's just not really something that clicked with me all that much, and I really don't see myself coming back every few months to play whatever new content is released for the game. Considering Monster Hunter Wilds is more popular than ever, and has come from a long and established series of games from the legendary publisher/developer Capcom, with no sign in sight of its popularity slowing down, I do think the game is doing exactly what they set out to do within a shorter amount of time than Monster Hunter World even. The game is reaching a far bigger audience, not only because of the streamlining they have done to change some of the more archaic parts of the series into a digestible MMO light, but also because of the legacy this game holds in pop culture culture as a whole. I'm sort of thinking that leaves me with a rating of about a 7.8. If you're curious about the game but aren't sure if it's your thing, this is by far and wide the most accessible Monster Hunter game and a fantastic entry point for any newcomer to the series. It has some issues that will definitely be ironed out via some updates, and others that will take another iteration to truly solve. On top of that, the multiplayer can be a bit esoteric, but it's really fun to learn how to use your weapon effectively and, as the title says, hunt monsters. Once again, I'm Brandon. This was my review on Monster Hunter Wilds. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and have a kick-ass week.